What would you do if one signature on a contract you never read cost you your freedom? Welcome back for another English movie review lesson. I'm Teacher Teddy, and today, let's talk about Wonka. Today's lesson is built around something hiding underneath all this film's chocolate and songs: deals. By the end of this episode, you'll have the English of contracts, bargains, and cons. The language that protects you every time you sign anything, anywhere. The story begins by introducing a young, hopeful Willy Wonka as he arrives by boat in a grand European city, determined to finally open his own chocolate shop, after years spent traveling the world and learning his craft from local experts everywhere he went. Wonka arrives ready to do business, so let's start with the most basic word of all: a deal. An agreement between two sides, where each gives something and gets something. English speakers make a deal, or more formally, strike a deal. And when the deal is unusually good, it's a bargain. Wonka's whole plan is one big hopeful deal with the world. My chocolate for your coins. The city, unfortunately, has other ideas. Wonka quickly discovers that the city's entire chocolate industry is secretly controlled by a cartel of 3 wealthy chocolatiers, who have quietly bribed the police chief and a chocolate-loving priest to keep any new competitor out of the market for good. And there's our first piece of dishonest deal vocabulary. To bribe someone is to pay them secretly to do something they shouldn't. And the payment itself is a bribe. In this film, paid in boxes of chocolate. Wherever there are deals, English keeps a shelf of words for the crooked ones, and this story is going to use most of them. With night falling and his pockets nearly empty, Wonka is welcomed into a warm guest house by Mrs. Scrubbit and her intimidating assistant, Bleacher. A comfortable room, a friendly smile, and a price that seems impossibly kind. Here is the idiom that should have saved him: too good to be true. If an offer seems too good to be true, English wisdom says it almost certainly is. A free holiday, a miracle price, a stranger's generous contract. The phrase exists precisely so you hesitate before signing. Wonka, tired and trusting, does not hesitate. Because before he can take the room, there's paperwork. A young girl named Noodle tries to save him with 4 words every English learner should tattoo somewhere visible. Read the small print. The small print, Americans say fine print, is the part of a contract printed small precisely because someone hopes you won't read it. The extra charges, the hidden conditions, the traps. Read the small print has become general life advice in English, far beyond contracts, and it is today's most valuable phrase. Mrs. Scrubbit waves the warning away with a masterpiece of soothing villainy. Just your standard T's and C's, but you're welcome to take a look if you want. T's and C's is the casual English abbreviation for terms and conditions, the rules of an agreement, and notice how the casualness itself is the trick, making the contract sound too boring to read. Wonka signs. The small print, it turns out, runs to several meters of extra clauses. The result is the language of owing. Wonka now owes Mrs. Scrubbit an enormous sum, money he must pay, which makes it a debt. And a debt must be paid off, which he can only do by working. So he is put to work paying off his debt in her laundrette, scrubbing sheets for a wage of one nearly worthless coin a day. O. Debt. Pay off. 3 small words that run a very large amount of the real world. Inside the laundrette, Wonka meets a small group of fellow workers trapped there the same way, including clever young Noodle, who has spent her whole life inside those walls without ever really knowing where she came from. What has happened to all of them has a whole family of names in English. It was a scam, a dishonest scheme to take people's money, and they were conned, tricked by someone who won their confidence first. Old-fashioned English would say they were swindled. Casual modern English would say they were ripped off. Scam, con, swindle, rip off. The words range from criminal plots to overpriced sandwiches, and learners need the whole set, because so do newspapers. Together, Wonka and the other trapped workers hatch a secret plan. Every day, while pretending to work at the laundrette, they'll actually slip out to sell Wonka's extraordinary chocolates around the city, hoping to eventually earn enough to buy their freedom outright. Here's the difference between the two sides of this story. The cartel is greedy, wanting far more money than anyone could need, and willing to hurt others to get it. Greed is the noun, and it is the engine of every villain in this film. Wonka's team, by contrast, simply wants to earn their freedom, to get something fairly through work. Greedy people take, everyone else earns. English keeps the moral line right there in the vocabulary. Wonka's chocolates prove so extraordinary that word spreads across the city almost overnight, sold in secret from a little cart that can be pushed out of sight whenever cartel spies get too close. Along the way, Wonka is also pursued by a tiny, determined Oompa Loompa named Lofty, who insists Wonka owes him a great debt of his own, for cocoa beans taken from his homeland years before the story ever begins, and who cheerfully sabotages Wonka's plans until the account is settled. Lofty is, in his own dignified way, the film's strictest businessman, and he lives by a principle English states in 4 words. A deal's a deal. Once an agreement is made, it must be honored. No renegotiating, no excuses. Its friendly cousin is to shake on it, sealing an agreement with a handshake. Between the cartel's crooked deals and Lofty's iron fair ones, the film quietly teaches the difference between deals you should fear and deals you can trust. As the cartel's grip on the city starts slipping, Wonka, Noodle, and their friends finally set their secret plan fully into motion, and everything this story has been building toward. Mrs. Scrubbit and Bleacher, the corrupt police chief, the chocolate-loving priest, and the 3 chocolatiers themselves, comes to a head in the final act. I won't spoil exactly how it all plays out, but expect real consequences for pretty much everyone who's been standing in Wonka's way, and honest answers to the questions the story has been quietly building, about the cartel, about the laundrette workers' freedom, and about Wonka's own family history. And through it all runs the line people quote most from this film, spoken by Wonka's mother in his dearest memory. Every good thing in this world started with a dream, so you hold on to yours. To hold on to something is to keep it and refuse to let it go. You hold on to hope, to memories, to dreams. After 90 minutes of contracts and cons, the film's final piece of language advice is the simplest deal of all. Whatever you sign, never sign away the dream. Now, let's talk about how this story is told. And the clearest point of comparison here is director Paul King's own earlier work on Paddington and Paddington 2. Critics have consistently pointed out how closely Wonka's warm, whimsical tone matches those two earlier films, built from the same instinct for turning elaborate, handcrafted production design into genuine emotional storytelling, rather than spectacle for its own sake. It's also worth comparing Wonka directly to the two earlier Charlie and the Chocolate Factory adaptations it's connected to. The beloved 1971 original, starring Gene Wilder, and the 2005 version directed by Tim Burton. Commercially, Wonka went on to outperform both of them at the worldwide box office, while critically, much of the conversation has focused on how successfully it manages to feel both genuinely new and warmly familiar at exactly the same time. This episode also has 5 bonus vocabulary words to review, pulled from how critics have actually described this film. Our first word is lavish. Lavish describes something produced with extremely generous, expensive detail. Critics repeatedly praised the lavish sets and costumes built for this film's colorful world. Our second word is colorful. Colorful describes something full of bright, varied color. Wonka's world is consistently described as bright and colorful, from the chocolate shop itself to the costumes worn throughout the city. Our third word is elaborate. Elaborate describes something made with lots of careful, complicated detail. The film's elaborate visual effects were singled out as one of its biggest achievements by several reviewers. Our fourth word is captivating. Captivating describes something so interesting or beautiful that it completely holds your attention. Reviewers frequently called the film's sets and production design genuinely captivating from start to finish. Our fifth and final word is dreamlike. Dreamlike describes something with a magical, unreal quality, similar to an actual dream. Several critics described Wonka's storybook world as dreamlike, especially inside Wonka's own imaginative chocolate creations. Now, let's talk about how Wonka has actually been received since its release. Commercially, the film was a major success, earning around $632 million worldwide against a $125 million budget, comfortably outperforming both previous film adaptations of Roald Dahl's original story, and becoming one of the highest-grossing films released in December 2023. That success is often credited to a genuinely broad appeal, drawing in families looking for a warm seasonal film alongside longtime fans of the earlier Charlie and the Chocolate Factory adaptations. Much of the online discussion has focused specifically on the production design, with reviewers repeatedly highlighting just how much detail went into building the film's shops, costumes, and magical inventions from scratch, rather than relying heavily on digital effects alone. Timothée Chalamet's performance has also generated plenty of conversation, with many viewers comparing his take on the character directly to Gene Wilder's original 1971 performance, while others have focused more on how the role fits alongside his more serious, dramatic work in other recent films. Hugh Grant's brief appearance as an Oompa Loompa named Lofty has been another consistent talking point online, frequently mentioned as one of the film's most memorable comedic performances, despite his relatively limited amount of screen time overall. Online, discussion of the film today tends to focus on a few recurring topics. Whether it successfully earns its place alongside the two earlier adaptations, how well its handcrafted production design holds up compared to more digitally driven blockbusters, and whether Warner Bros. Will eventually continue Wonka's story in a further sequel. Let's go through the language of deals from this episode. You make or strike a deal. A very good one is a bargain. And you seal it when you shake on it. Once it's agreed, a deal's a deal. Before you sign a contract, always read the small print, the fine print in American English. Because the T's and C's, the terms and conditions, are where the traps hide. And if an offer seems too good to be true, it almost certainly is. If things go wrong, you may owe money, a debt, which must be paid off. A dishonest scheme is a scam. Its victims are conned, swindled, or ripped off. A secret payment to a corrupt official is a bribe, and the people behind all of it are greedy, while honest people simply earn what they have. And keep the film's gentlest phrase: to hold on to something, hope, a memory, a dream, is to keep it and refuse to let go. Try it yourself. Think of the last thing you signed up for: a phone contract, an app, a gym, and describe it in 2 sentences using small print and T's and C's. Let's also go through our 5 bonus vocabulary words from this episode. Lavish. Made with generous, expensive detail. The sets are absolutely lavish. Colorful. Full of bright, varied color. Every street in this film is joyfully colorful. Elaborate. Full of careful, complicated detail. The chocolate machines are wonderfully elaborate. Captivating. Holding your attention completely. The production design is captivating from the first scene. Dreamlike. Magical and unreal, like a dream. The chocolate shop reveal is genuinely dreamlike. Try using one of these 5 words yourself, either to describe this film or the most beautiful shop you've ever walked into. So, what's the final verdict on Wonka? It's a warm, generous, beautifully built family musical that turns out to have a surprisingly sharp lesson tucked inside its chocolate box. Dream big, but read what you sign. Paul King brings the same handmade charm that made his Paddington films beloved. Timothée Chalamet finds his own version of the character rather than copying anyone, and Hugh Grant steals every scene he's given. If you want a family film that leaves everyone humming and no one upset, this is about as safe and as sweet as a bet gets. Did you enjoy Wonka? Let me know in the comments on the video, or get in touch. If this helped you improve your English today, subscribe on YouTube, or follow along on Spotify or Apple Podcasts for more movies reviewed in slow, clear English. Interactive learning materials for this lesson can be found for free on engmoviereviews.com. Climax.com.